So I am the oldest of 12 kids. I was raised homeschooled, and when I was around 15, 16, started performing with my family. My dad kind of urged us that way. I was in that environment till I was 24. We were on TV, and there are a lot of kind of happy, beautiful things on the outside, but they're going all the way back to the beginning with some like really toxic threads throughout the story as well. My dad was really abusive from my very earliest memories. And if you can think of a type of abuse, that was probably on the table. He was sexually abusive. He became violent, especially towards the end, physically abusive. There's a scene in my book, they call them the dark ages, like those few months before I left that were so hard. And we were in the bus. My dad told me to apologize, and I did not. He hit me in the face, which he hadn't really done that before. A police car had seen the bus pull over. The policeman came to the door, and nobody had to even say anything to me. I just went and like hid in my bus because I knew how to put a smile on my face, but I couldn't out-smile like the blood and the bruising that was probably happening at that point. As I was sitting there hiding, I felt like the small child who needed someone to come save her, but I was very aware that I was like in an adult's body, and it was like, I'm still waiting for permission to accept this is really happening. And here's help at the door, and it is not within me to reach for that. It's never going to get easier than it is in this split second. And so I was just wondering, am I ever going to get out? You know, that was the darkest moment for me. In some sense, carry more shame around, and it's still so confusing, is at 23, I was being accused of being possessed by a demon for wanting to leave the house. I was being made into the problem. Like my dad, who now in the story we understand he's convicted, did these things, he pled guilty to these things, but go back just a couple chapters earlier in the story, Dad was not being talked about as the problem. I was being talked about as the problem. When you are told from day one that there is nothing good about you and you deserve every bad thing that happens to you, particularly as a female child, the only valid role for you is to be happy, to never complain, to never talk back, to always obey. Where is the asterisk disclaimer of dads are not God and sometimes aren't to be obeyed and they aren't to be, and who do you speak out to? For me, I'm not sure that I will always stay in the big tent of Christianity, but I'd really love to find a home there because there's some really beautiful things there. It's family, a lot of my community lives there, but there's some really toxic things inside this tent. The only thing I know is that I can't stay with what I was raised with and what I was given, because it's criminal.
With you, I found God after years of fundamental evangelical culture in life. I became an alcoholic and a drug addict, and I found God in recovery. And it's the same God. It's just we're all representing God the way we want to represent them. But I think that when we use it as a weapon to hurt people by, no, don't question this. Oh, I question everything. And you can question me too. Feel free to. I think when we stop questioning things, we're in trouble.
All these decades later, telling my mom, like, Mom, I have to tell my story and my truth, and I realize that standing in the way of my healing, and to have to say that's on you and this is on me, like we each have to do our own work. Code word there being codependency and enmeshment. Like there was a lot of that with my family. Try to not do that with any of my family members is still sometimes a great challenge. To leave my family was not just walking out the door, it was leaving the business, the religion, almost like a cult. And when I did get out, I got straight into trauma therapy. I'm about 5-6 years now into a totally new life, and just this past year came back and reclaimed music as a solo artist, put out a record where all the songs are straight from processing my story, and then also put out a memoir at the end of last year, which really is saying all the things that I never said for what now is kind of 30 years of a very strange kind of life.